Welcome. Wherever you are, whether lying down for the night, preparing for a nap, or simply letting the weight of the day soften into stillness, you've chosen to drift through time. And tonight, we're setting sail. Not on a swift cruise, not aboard a glittering ship with linen napkins and brass railings, but onto the creaking decks of a 17th-century sailing vessel. A wooden world adrift between continents, caught in winds, waves, and wonder. It was the age of exploration, but also the age of scurvy, storms, and sleepless nights. A time when ships crossed vast oceans with no engine, no GPS, only canvas sails, celestial maps, and the desperation to return home alive. Over the next 2 hours, you'll step into this world. You'll feel the slant of the deck beneath your feet, the salt drying on your skin, and the uncertain future stretching to the horizon. First, you'll inhabit the daily life of a sailor, not the captain, not the officers, just you, a common seaman adrift on duty. Then, we'll follow the story of Ferdinand Magellan, whose ambition would pull him beyond the edge of known maps. Later, we'll trace the fading footsteps of a lost colony, one that simply vanished into silence. And finally, we'll wander through the contrasting calm of luxury at sea, where lords and ladies dined on porcelain while storms raged outside. But for now, find your breath. Let it settle. Let it slow, because the ship is ready to leave the harbor, and your voyage through time begins now. Imagine this. You awaken before dawn, not to the sound of an alarm clock, but to the deep groaning of wood strained by waves. The ship rocks gently, or perhaps not so gently, depending on the weather. Your hammock is damp again. Salt air creeps into everything, into your clothes, into your skin, into your bones. You are a sailor. It's 1622, and this is your life. The first thing you do is roll out of your swinging bed. You try not to fall. The ship is alive beneath your feet, moving with a rhythm that never stops. Even after months at sea, your body doesn't always agree with it. Sometimes your stomach churns. Other times, your knees buckle. But it doesn't matter. Orders come, whether you're ready or not. The food isn't waiting for you. There is no kitchen, only a galley. No chef, only a cook with fingers stained by fire and salt. Your breakfast might be a dry biscuit, not freshly baked, not even from this week. It's called hardtack, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Hard, tacky, and infested usually with tiny beetles or weevils. You don't remove them. You eat around them. Or you pretend they're seasoning. Water? It's stored in wooden barrels. Days ago, it tasted like the river. Now it tastes like the barrel. Or worse. So the safer option is beer. Or watered-down wine, if you're lucky. Yes, even in the morning. Because at sea, sober is more dangerous than buzzed. You shuffle toward your workstation. Are you hauling rope today? Scrubbing decks with sand and seawater? Patching sails that tore during last night's wind? Maybe you re-cleaning out the bilge, the lowest part of the ship, where filth collects like a forgotten swamp. It smells like rotten mold and the faint memory of death. But it's your job, and it must be done. If you're higher up the chain, you might take the helm, but you're not. You're here to obey, to row, to climb, to fix, to clean. The officers bark orders. The captain, you rarely see him. His world is the quarterdeck. Yours is below, near the hull, near the rats, near the dirt and dark. And oh, the rats. They thrive in the shadows. They live under barrels, between crates, even in the stores of grain. Some men chase them with knives, others just accept them. Because out here at sea, even the rats are survivors. Now and then, you get time off, a moment to rest. But not really. There's always the creak of the mast, the moaning of the rigging, the splash of water as it slaps the hull again and again and again. And when the storms come, everything changes. Imagine holding a rope so tight your palms blister. Rain in your eyes, wind in your ears, The sea rising, falling, tilting the world. You move because you must, because if you stop, you're overboard. Gone. No grave but the sea. Then the storm passes, and the work begins again. Sails to be mended, lines to be untangled, crates to be righted. And somewhere in all this, you try to sleep. Not in silence, but in the creaking, groaning, endlessly moving belly of the ship. In a hammock that sways like a cradle, but offers no comfort. With sailors snoring beside you, with lice biting your skin, with scurvy slowly pulling at your gums, though you don't yet know the cause. Some men lose their teeth, others lose their minds. Some lose both. And still the captain calls for more speed. Still the voyage continues. You wonder how long you've been at sea. 4 weeks? 6? Does it matter? There is no shore, only ocean, only wind, only the endless call of orders, and the quiet hope that someday land will appear again. But for now, you sleep when you can. You eat what you're given. You work until your fingers ache. This is your life. This is the rhythm of survival, the rhythm of the sea, unchanging, unforgiving, unstoppable. And still, the ship sails on. Let us drift now. From the deck you've scrubbed and the hammocks you've swung in, into the unfolding path of a man whose ambitions stretched beyond the known world. Ferdinand Magellan, born in Portugal. But it was under a Spanish flag that he would attempt something no one had ever done before: to sail around the entire world, to trace by wind and by will the true shape of the planet. This was not a journey of comfort. It was not a path paved with certainty. It was a voyage through fog, famine, fire, and rebellion. But above all, it was a voyage through the unknown. The year is 1519. Magellan stands before the Spanish crown with a plan. He promises a western route to the Spice Islands, rich with cloves, nutmeg, and unimaginable wealth. He convinces the young King Charles I that the Portuguese have had their way long enough. It is Spain's turn to reach the east by going west. He is given 5 ships, not large, not built for luxury. But they are his: the Trinidad, the San Antonio, the Concepcion, the Victoria, and the Santiago. And with them, he is given a crew of nearly 270 men, sailors, prisoners, adventurers, desperates. Few know what awaits them. They depart from Seville in September, their sails catching not just the wind, but also whispers of doubt. Because Magellan, despite his command, is not entirely trusted. He is Portuguese, after all, leading a Spanish mission. And among the officers, tension brews quietly. The Atlantic crossing is slow. They skirt the coast of South America, searching for a strait, a way through the continent to the other ocean. But the land stretches on, endless and rocky. The months grow long, supplies thin, and the men grow restless. They stop at what is now Rio de Janeiro, then further south, into colder waters. In March of 1520, they anchor in what Magellan names Puerto San Julian. It is here that the mutiny begins. 3 of his captains rise against him. They believe he is leading them to death, that the strait doesn't exist, that they should turn back. But Magellan does not bend. With a calm ferocity, he crushes the mutiny. 1 captain is executed, another is marooned, the 3rd spared, but broken. The message is clear. This is his voyage, and it will continue, one way or another. They finally find the strait in October of 1520, a winding, icy passage now called the Strait of Magellan. It takes weeks to navigate. The tides are treacherous. 1 ship turns back entirely, deserting the fleet and disappearing into history. But 4 ships emerge into an ocean so calm, so deceptively gentle. Magellan names it the Mar Pacifico, the Pacific Ocean. And then begins the most grueling stretch of the journey. They sail west across waters no European ship has crossed. No maps, no landmarks, just blue, stretching endlessly. Weeks pass, then months. The food runs out. Leather is boiled for meals. Rats, once despised, are hunted and sold for silver coins. Men die slowly. Scurvy blooms in their mouths. Salt sores open on their skin. The silence of the sea becomes unbearable. Still, they sail. At last, after nearly 100 days, they glimpse land. Tiny islands, distant shores, and eventually, the Philippines. It feels like success. Like the world is finally unfolding beneath their sails. But it is here, in April of 1521, that Magellan's story ends. On the island of Mactan, Magellan becomes entangled in local conflicts. He promises aid to a converted chieftain, and in doing so challenges another. He leads a small force ashore, believing his armor and his presence will be enough. It is not. Magellan is struck down in the surf, abandoned by many of his men, his body never recovered. The man who had circled half the world falls not in a storm, not to mutiny or famine, but to the sharp point of unfamiliar politics on an unfamiliar beach. Of the 5 ships that began the voyage, only one returns, the Victoria, commanded not by Magellan, but by Juan Sebastian Elcano, a Basque navigator who takes the helm after Magellan's death. They limp back to Spain in 1522, 3 years after they left. 18 men, sunken-eyed, bone-thin, and changed forever. They have done what no one else had. They circled the earth. They touched lands that maps did not know. They proved, in the most brutal, exhausting way possible, that the world was round and that it could be crossed. But at what cost? Hundreds left, 18 returned, and their captain lies beneath foreign waves. Tonight we sail alongside them only in memory, but as the sails billow above and the stars shine over the calm Pacific, we remember what it means to explore not for comfort, but for conquest. Not for glory, but for proof. And so, quietly, the ship moves on. In 1587, a new group is sent, 117 settlers. This time, it's not just soldiers or adventurers, it's families, men, women, and children. Among them is a man named John White, an artist, a map maker, and now governor of the colony. His daughter, Eleanor Dare, is among the settlers, and it is here at Roanoke that she gives birth to the first English child born on American soil, Virginia Dare. Imagine it, a tiny cry carried on the salty breeze, a flicker of life swaddled in hope, a sign that the colony might not just survive, but grow. But supplies run low, tensions rise with the native peoples, and John White, reluctantly, returns to England for help. He promises to come back quickly, a few months perhaps, enough time to gather ships, food, tools, and return with renewed support. But across the Atlantic, the tides of history shift. England is gripped by war, the Spanish Armada threatens invasion, and every ship is needed at home. John White is delayed, not for months, but for years. When he finally returns in 1590, he finds nothing. The fort is abandoned. Cabins collapsed. Fields overgrown. There are no signs of struggle, no bones, no fire-blackened ruins, just emptiness and quiet. On a tree, a single word has been carved: Croatoan. It was the name of a nearby island and of a local indigenous tribe. White believes the colonists may have relocated there willingly, that perhaps in his absence they moved inland or sought shelter among native allies. But storms prevent him from investigating, and with winter approaching, his crew refuses to linger. The search ends, almost before it begins, and the settlers of Roanoke are never seen again. Theories abound. Some say they integrated with the Croatoan people. There were later reports of fair-haired children among certain tribes, traces of English words, fragments of European tools. Others suggest disease, or starvation, or attack by unfriendly tribes. or even that they attempted to return to sea and were lost. No definitive answer ever emerges, and the colony becomes not a beginning, but a question. For centuries, the word Croatoan would echo in the margins of history, a symbol of disappearance, of uncertainty. Edgar Allan Poe reportedly uttered it on his deathbed. It appeared carved in places where others would vanish, stories that became modern folklore. A single word, both clue and riddle. Tonight, as you rest. Imagine walking through the overgrown remains of Roanoke, the tall grass bending in the wind, the whisper of leaves above, a crumbling post, a scattered shell, a feeling that something once lived here. You hear no cries, no footsteps, only your own breath, soft in the coastal air. Somewhere beneath the soil may lie the story. But for now, it remains buried as the waves lap quietly along the shore and the stars begin to emerge over the trees. Roanoke sleeps, and its secrets sleep with it. And now, let us return to the sea, but not to the salt-stung decks of the common sailor, not to the calloused hands or the rope-burned palms. No. This time, we rise above, to the upper deck, to the private cabins, to the quiet luxury of those who sailed not to serve, but to be served. We board a Spanish galleon, not as crew, but as noble passenger, a floating palace carved in oak and cedar, adorned in brass and velvet, where meals are plated in silver and the air carries the soft perfume of imported oils. This is a different voyage entirely. Imagine yourself stepping aboard in the early 1600s. You are a nobleman or noblewoman summoned to the New World, perhaps to govern a colony, to meet a merchant, or to simply escape the Spanish court for a time. Your boots touch polished wood. You're escorted by servants, and your belongings, trunks of silk, tobacco, letters, and books, are already stowed. Your quarters are unlike anything the sailors know. They are private, enclosed, fragrant with wax and rosewater. There is a bed, not a hammock, layered in wool and linen, tucked tight and shaded by curtains. A writing desk waits near the window. Not a wide view, but enough to glimpse the ocean curling away in blues and grays. Your meals are prepared by the ship's appointed cook, with ingredients preserved and packed from Spain's heartland. In the captain's dining room, you dine with others of your rank. The table is set with care. Pewter and silver polished to a dull gleam, wooden bowls for stew. A roasted game bird, perhaps, soaked in wine and cloves. There is bread, dense and earthy, olives salted and slick, cheese, hard from the weeks at sea but still rich. And to drink, there is wine, always wine, stored in barrels nestled below your feet, deep in the galleon's hold. Conversations move slowly, discussions of inheritance or trade or poetry, sometimes silence, sometimes song, but always the ocean murmurs beyond the walls. Your days are measured by ritual. In the morning, you may read. From a leather-bound volume of Virgil, perhaps, or a Bible edged in gold leaf, you write letters. Notes of diplomacy or longing, with ink that stains your fingers, sealed with wax, marked with your crest. Some nobles pass time playing cards. Others pace the upper decks, wrapped in cloaks to guard against the wind. You watch the sailors from above, watch them heave and sweat and shout, but their voices don't reach you. Their world stays distant. On calm nights, the galleon glides silently, the sails full, the stars clear. You might join the captain for a walk along the quarterdeck. You might hear stories of storms weathered, of pirates spotted, of ports visited long ago. And all around you, the sea sings its slow, quiet lullaby. The boards beneath your feet shift gently, like a cradle on the waves. Not all is serene, of course. Even nobles feel the motion of the ocean. Even silks cannot ward off seasickness. Even the rich grow weary when land remains distant for too long. But here, in your small cabin, Cushioned by privilege and cedar-scented stillness, the journey feels survivable, even beautiful. You do not fetch water. You do not patch sails. You do not fear the lash or the rationing of biscuit. And when storms come, you retreat to your cabin, you light a lantern, you wait. Some galleons carry treasure, gold, silver, emeralds, stacked beneath the floorboards, guarded and catalogued. Invisible wealth gliding across oceans. Others carry men like you, women like you, children born on the voyage, cradled by nurses. The sea sees them all the same. But within the ship, hierarchies hold. In time, you will see land. The dark outline of trees on a distant shore, the glint of sun on a colonial roof tile, and when you disembark, with your cloak swept back, your gloves drawn on, and your boots meeting soil once claimed by kings, you will carry with you the memory of quiet days at sea, of long naps rocked by tide, of supper under lantern light, of poems penned in motion, and voices murmuring through the wood. The common sailor may remember the voyage as torment, but you remember it as time suspended, time caught between two shores, time softened by comfort, and wrapped gently in the rhythm of the ocean. And so, the voyage ends, not just across oceans, but across time. We have traveled far, from the soaked hammocks and scurvy-soaked decks of the common sailor to the brutal journey of Magellan, through the silent disappearance of Roanoke, and finally into the quiet chambers of nobility, sailing the same sea, but a world away in comfort. Each chapter of this seafaring past carries its own rhythm, its own scent of salt and tar, its own chorus of creaking timber, whispered prayers, and crashing waves. And perhaps you can still hear it. The hush of wind slipping through canvas, the low groan of wood expanding under pressure, the distant clang of a bell marking another hour in the middle of nowhere. But before we go, let us drift just a little longer through time. Let us linger in the shadows of the forgotten, the overlooked, and the quietly enduring. Imagine being assigned to the bilge crew. Down there, below the waterline, the air is thick with rot and humidity. Your job is to pump out water, clear out refuse, and fix leaks. You are, quite literally, at the bottom of the ship's hierarchy. There are no views of the sea, no fresh air, just the scent of damp timbers and sweat. The crew above may grumble about hard tack and stormy decks, but you would give anything for even a moment of sunlight. Down here, everything is silent except for the slosh of water and the slow ticking of time. The hours stretch long. The work is backbreaking, and the recognition, non-existent. Yet ships sailed on because of you. Let us now step off the ship and onto the cobbled streets of a bustling 17th-century port city. Here, dock hands haul crates, tavern doors creak open. The smell of fish, ale, and smoke drifts through narrow alleyways. This was where sailors sought fleeting comfort before heading back to sea. The port city was a chaotic dance of commerce, gossip, disease, and temptation. There were broadsheets filled with rumors of shipwrecks, recruiters shouting for more hands, and mothers, lovers, and children waiting for men who would never return. It was here that global empires began, not on the ship, but at the dock, where contracts were signed, maps were traded, and fortunes whispered into existence. Now, gaze upward, past the sails and into the sky. Before GPS, before engines, before radios, the sea was crossed with instruments as delicate as they were imprecise. Astrolabes, quadrants, hourglasses, charts inked by hand. A ship's survival depended on its navigator, who traced lines across parchment by candlelight, measuring the angle of Polaris or the height of the sun. Time itself was measured in shifting sand and dripping oil. Latitude was a mystery until it was guessed correctly. Longitude? Even more elusive. The stars were maps. The moon, a clock. The ocean, unknowable. Every voyage was a lesson in risk, and yet Across centuries, humanity kept sailing forward. And finally, let us wander into the realm of what is lost. Shipwrecks, forgotten vessels, now resting on the ocean floor, their wooden ribs buried in sand. Some were destroyed in storms, their names washed away. Others vanished without a trace, leaving only legends. There are whispers, always whispers, of ghost ships appearing on foggy horizons. The Flying Dutchman, the Mary Celeste, stories passed from sailor to sailor between pulls of rum under starlit skies. These stories blend truth and fear, a way to explain the sea's unpredictability, a way to make sense of loss, and still, even now, new wrecks are found. Ships thought lost forever, revealed by sonar and curiosity, each one a time capsule, each one a story unfinished. History, like the sea, rarely sleeps. It churns beneath the surface, always moving, always reshaping the present with the undertow of the past. But here, in this moment, you can rest, because now you know what it meant to live it, to endure the long days of salt and labor, to vanish without answers, to dine by candlelight while the ship rocked gently beneath your feet. You know what it meant to be there. And maybe, just maybe, that knowing lets you drift a little softer tonight. The world outside is still spinning, but in here, things have slowed. The air is quieter. Your thoughts are softer, your breath deeper. Let them rock you. These stories, these rhythms, these waves from long ago. And if sleep hasn't already taken you, let it come now. Like a tide, easing in, unrushed, unforced, inevitable. Because here, you are safe, you are still. And the voyage for tonight is over. Good night, and may your dreams be calm as the sea at dawn.